And I know when I realize I'm going to put this out there, before we get started. I'm going to talk to you straight as I possibly can. If you've watched any of the episodes we've done here, if you're part of anything we do in the Wake Up Warrior movement, this is always brought to you by a movement of men. I'm not some fucking guru. I'm not some therapist. I don't have any licenses. I simply share topics that have been my experience. My wife even said this morning as she was standing in the restroom in our bathroom. She was getting ready. I was getting ready. I'd already dropped the kids off at school. I'd walked 5 miles already with my buddy with 50-pound rucksacks on and weighted vests, and we'd talked about all kinds of stuff, and then I'd worked out, and then I did the whole morning routine. And I asked my wife, I said, listen, I'm talking about a topic today. She said, what's the topic? And I said, porn, power, and production. And she's like, okay. And I asked her for some of her insight on this, and she said, listen, be tasteful. Be tasteful. And I said, listen, there's the version of tasteful that most people deal with, and there's a version of tasteful that I deal with. I hope by the time we're done today that you're able to have a different perspective on this conversation of porn. And if you're a woman that happens to be watching this, or you're watching this because your man invited you to watch it with him, I hope that this gives you some insights into the mind how a lot of men operate. And on the flip side, if you're a man watching this show, that this show itself, brought to you again by Wake Up Warrior, that we're able to help you see that possibly not playing alone, that this bullshit of being taught that you should play alone, that you should experience even the conversation of porn alone, because this shit lives in the dark and it lives in the secrets that we don't say. It lives in the place that we choose not to play. It lives in a way when we choose not to live the warrior's way. And so I'm not here to attack anybody in this episode. But what I am here to do is have a fucking conversation, and people are not having it at church. They're not having online. They're not having with their parents. We're not having it with their kids. They're not having it with their spouse. They're not having it even with themselves. They're turning a blind eye. I'm deaf, I'm blind, I'm dumb. I don't really know what's happening, yet my fucking life is not working. And porn has destroyed more marriages and confused more men than just about any single piece inside of technology. And our cell phones are beautiful, but they are also the portal to this place called the land of an answer to a problem that nobody actually wants to fucking talk about. So what is that problem? That problem started asking here, and if you haven't seen the systematic sedation of men in episode number 4, I would encourage you to go back and watch that show. I spent an entire hour outlining literally the systematic 100-year systematic sedation of men like you and I. Why technology itself has actually birthed us into a place, and our society has taught men to be, before they even came out of the vaginal canal, a man today had no fucking chance. No chance to see anything. No chance to experience life truly for what it could be. There was just the layer upon layer upon layer upon layer of stories and teachings and trainings and educations by people who ultimately couldn't actually see. You know what happens after 100 years? 100 years when generation after generation continue to layer upon layer upon layer upon layer the bullshit, what you have is a life that doesn't fucking make sense anymore. And in that life, going to porn every day and masturbating instead of connecting with your wife, that makes sense. And that's the hardest part about it. Is that our lives make sense inside of this story that we tell. And we tell the story so fucking many times that we actually start to believe the story and we think the story is true. And pretty quickly, this idea of being the man, which has become such a confusing conversation because our society has taught men, here's what it means to be a man. It says, get the money at all costs. This is your first and primary responsibility. Get paid. That's it. Get paid. Second, ignore your feelings. Don't talk about how you're feeling. Definitely don't talk about your sexual feelings because we don't want to hear about it. And ladies, you haven't made it any easier on guys. Men are not given permission to talk about the true energy that flows through us. On the one side, you say, go get the fucking money. The part you don't understand is to go get the fucking money requires the same energy that drives the desire to penetrate a vagina with a penis. This sexual drive that is in a man is the same thing that creates procreation and creation. They're the same coin. You flip it over, you create shit. You flip it over, you procreate. So don't be surprised when your man starts to produce and the next thing he wants to do is he wants to get laid. But this is a problem because we live in a society in which men can't talk about this shit. They can't talk about it with their buddies, let alone talk about it with their wife. It's not safe. And men aren't trained in how to use the language to do it. The third piece, we don't need you. Listen, bro, listen. We don't actually need you. The feminist movement, which has become feminism, the feminazi revolution of women who have said, listen, I've got as big of balls as you do, my man. I don't even need you. I don't even need you. Legitimately, go get paid, shut the fuck up about your feelings, and guess what? I don't need you. And inside of this, what we have is a society of men who are all alone. And you know what men who are all alone do? They do shit that doesn't make sense when they were with the brothers. They do shit that doesn't make sense in the dark, but in the dark, it actually makes sense.